One moment, this behemoth was slicing through the Atlantic waves, and the next, it vanished. No wreckage, no survivors. 306 souls lost forever, swallowed by a mystery still unsolved more than a century later. March 1918. The world was engulfed in the flames of the Great War, but somewhere, far from the front lines, a titanic vessel braced to write itself into history, not as a warrior, but as a silent transport. The USS Cyclops, a Navy collier of nearly 19,000 tons, was a steel giant entrusted with hauling vital cargo. Manganese ore, a critical war resource. On her last voyage, she bore 306 officers and crew alongside 10,000 tons of this dense, heavy mineral. The Cyclops was no stranger to the sea. Launched in 1910, her massive hull was built to endure the Atlantic's roaring tempests and the wear of constant supply runs. She was a workhorse, typically loaded with coal to feed the roaring furnaces of American battleships. Yet this time, she carried the heavier, more treacherous manganese ore. The ore weighed down her holds far beyond the usual. Some reports say it was dangerously overloaded. She steamed out from Rio de Janeiro harbor on February 15, 1918, where her holds were filled, bound for Baltimore, Maryland. Initially, all seemed routine, but the giant ship was already showing weakness. Her starboard engine had a cracked cylinder, slowing her down from her normal 14.6 knots maximum to about 10. The captain knew she could not make her usual swift pace. Repairs were scheduled for her return to Baltimore. After a stopover in Barbados on March 3rd, to adjust cargo and check on conditions, Cyclops departed on March 4, 1918. She set off into the endless Atlantic, her destination thousands of miles away. But unlike any other voyage she had ever made, the Cyclops carried a secret, dark and strange, one that would soon plunge her and all souls aboard into the greatest maritime mystery of the era. For days after departure, silence descended. No messages escaped the steel colossus. Her last transmission read only, "Weather fair, all well." Then, nothing. No distress signals, no calls for help, no response to the hundreds of radio calls from nearby ships. Her radio operators received no reply. No debris, no lifeboats, no signs that a struggle had taken place. The giant ship had simply vanished. Within weeks, frantic searches scoured thousands of square miles of ocean, but found not a shred of wreckage. Navy authorities were stunned. How could a nearly 20,000-ton ship with a seasoned crew disappear without a trace? The loss of the USS Cyclops remains the largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. Navy history. 306 men, all vanished as if swallowed whole by the ocean itself. So profound was the disappearance that newspapers speculated wildly. Some whispered of sea monsters, others the cryptic Bermuda Triangle. Conspiracy flourished, but the Cyclops remained silent, lost to the deep. This is the story of the USS Cyclops, a story about duty, tragedy, and the depths of the unknown sea. The final stretch of the USS Cyclops' journey began after she departed Barbados on March 4, 1918. The ship was already sailing crippled, with a cracked starboard engine cylinder rendering one engine inoperative, reducing her speed. Yet, her captain, George W. Worley, pressed onward across the vast Atlantic toward Baltimore, Maryland, where no one awaited the monster ship's triumphant return, but instead, a mystery that would baffle generations. The Cyclops carried an overload of manganese ore, an unusually dense cargo for the ship and potentially destabilizing. The loading was inspected, and though initially suspected of being over capacity, naval authorities cleared her as properly loaded and secured. But the ship's condition was precarious. Rumors in the Navy hinted of hull stress, machinery problems, and worn pipework. The captain's leadership was questioned, especially because Captain Worley had a German heritage during a time of fierce anti-German sentiment in the U.S., which bred rumors of espionage and sabotage. Speculation swirled that perhaps Cyclops was tampered with, or even turned over to the enemy. A dangerous, unproven theory that clouds the truth today. On board, 306 souls manned the Cyclops. Their lives represented a cross-section of American society, including men from all backgrounds, sailors, engineers, cooks, and electricians. Among them was Lewis H. Hardwick, an African-American mess attendant, whose son would later become a celebrated boxing champion. These lives were ordinary, heroic, tied to the dangerous work of wartime logistics. The last wireless transmission from the Cyclops, sent after leaving Barbados, was laconic. Weather fair, all well. It was March 4, 1918. The ship was expected in Baltimore on March 13th. After that, silence fell. The cluttered radio rooms on shore awaited any further messages that never came. Days passed. The Cyclops remained unaccounted for. After March 18th, the Navy began to worry. They sent radio messages demanding the ship's status, but received no answer. By March 22nd, Naval Command issued search orders. Ships scoured the Atlantic waters around the Bahamas and along anticipated routes, including islands and reefs rumored to shelter German submarines. Despite frantic efforts by USS Vixen, USS Albatross, and USS Petrel, not a single trace of Cyclops, no debris, no oil slicks, no lifeboats was found. The lack of any distress call was particularly haunting. Not once had the Cyclops sent an SOS or even hinted of distress. This was unlike any loss to date in the era of wireless telegraphy. Normally, even a sinking ship would send a desperate signal. But the Cyclops remained ghost-like. Investigators pored over weather records. No storms or formidable seas were reported along the route during her disappearance. German U-boats were active in the Atlantic, yet none recorded engagement with the Cyclops. Post-war checks of German archives found no evidence of enemy attack, casting doubt on theories of wartime sabotage. Theories ranged wildly. Some blamed structural failure or rogue waves capsizing the ship. Others suspected that the heavy manganese ore cargo might have shifted, causing her to list and sink quickly. There were even outlandish speculations about sea monsters, the Bermuda Triangle's supernatural forces, or invisible extraterrestrial interventions, none supported by evidence. The truth was elusive, the ocean keeping its secrets deep. Captain Worley's command decisions, including the stop in Barbados to take on coal and supplies, raised more questions amid suspicions about his loyalties and temperament. Theories of mutiny and sabotage were entertained, but never proved. By April 15, 1918, the U.S. Navy publicly declared the USS Cyclops lost with all 306 aboard, marking the disguised non-combat disappearance in American naval history. The event haunted the Navy and families, leaving a void of answers. As the war raged on, the mystery of the Cyclops' fate became a dark legend. The ship's name was etched into naval lore, recalling the unsolvable disappearance and the silence that followed. The deeper the investigation into the USS Cyclops' disappearance, the murkier the waters became. Despite an extensive naval inquiry following the loss, the final conclusion was frustratingly vague. Many theories have been advanced, but none that satisfactorily accounts for her disappearance. No wreckage was ever found, not even a hint of debris or a lifeboat. Theories ranged from catastrophic structural failure to enemy action, yet none conclusive. One of the most credible explanations emerged from Conrad A. Nervig, a former crew member who left the Cyclops just before her final voyage. Nervig asserted that the ship's heavy manganese ore was improperly loaded, concentrating the cargo amidships. This severe imbalance, combined with the ship's already weakened structure in rough seas, could have caused the vessel to buckle and break in two, sinking suddenly and giving the crew no time to send distress signals or launch lifeboats. Supporting this theory were reports that the only officer experienced with manganese storage, the executive officer, had been arrested and confined after a heated dispute with Captain George Worley. Worley, the ship's commander, was widely disliked. Known as an abrasive and erratic leader, he fueled rumors of mutiny aboard Cyclops during prior voyages. Some contemporaneous accounts described him as a volatile figure who perhaps compromised ship safety through poor decisions. Captain Worley also struggled with the ship's failing starboard engine. A cracked cylinder slowed the vessel severely. There were unconfirmed sightings suggesting the Cyclops might have been near Virginia's coast days before her scheduled arrival, long before expected. Meteorological records revealed a severe storm around that time frame, adding the possibility that the Cyclops faced brutal seas and high waves that overwhelmed her compromised structure. Enemy action was considered but lacked evidence. Though German U-boats prowled the Atlantic, no records indicated attacks on the Cyclops. Germany, which acknowledged sinking many ships like the Lusitania, had no known motive to hide involvement in the Cyclops' disappearance. Conspiracy theories flourished. Some claimed Captain Worley betrayed the Navy due to his German ancestry, handing the Cyclops over to the enemy. Others whispered of supernatural forces linked to the Bermuda Triangle or alien intervention. Yet none stood up to scrutiny. Ultimately, the ocean's silence cloaked the truth. Without wreckage, survivors, or a distress call, Cyclops became a ghost ship lost in the vast Atlantic, embodying the darkest mysteries of the sea. The aftermath left grieving families and a Navy haunted by unanswered questions. The disappearance spurred changes in naval protocol, including stricter cargo loading largests and improved ship maintenance oversight. The Cyclops tragedy underlined the perils not only of combat, but of the ocean itself. The loss of the USS Cyclops was front-page news across America. By June 1918, Assistant Secretary of the Navy Franklin D. Roosevelt declared her and all 306 souls officially lost. Families would never see their loved ones return, and no wreckage or clear explanation ever surfaced. Among those lost was mess attendant Lewis H. Hardwick, whose son, the Coco Kid, became a world champion boxer. His father's disappearance haunting his family history. Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.